All right, man, so if you're anything like me, you got this a7 III, and this thing is not freaking cheap, yo. If you get one of the brothers like the a7iii or a7iii, Sony a9, like you get up there in the several thousands of dollars. See, I don't know about y'all, but I ain't got money to be buying more lenses after the a7 III because full frame lenses are expensive. And not only are they expensive, they're expensive as what? So I fortunately had a Sony a6300 and I had a few crop sensor lenses too. Now, you can use the same principle I'm gonna talk about with any of the Sony crop sensor lenses. The Sony a7 III, the Sony a7R III, all of those cameras are smart enough to know when the lens that's actually made for crop sensor cameras gets put on it, what'll happen is it'll go into crop sensor mode. Now, Terry, what does that mean? All right, I got you. So here's your sensor. Well, crop sensor lenses have a smaller image circle. So when you put that lens on a full frame, what the camera does is instead of using a full frame, it crops it down and only uses the center of that sensor. Now, of course, that's got some caveats, right? The first thing is obviously when you put this lens on a full frame sensor, it's not gonna cover the whole sensor. Now with the a7 III, you can actually turn off the automatic mode to where it switches to crop sensor, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like real quick. So here's a picture where I turn it off, and you can actually see the image circle is smaller than the sensor, and you're gonna get a whole lot of black vignette. Here's that same picture without the crop mode. Now, without the crop mode, it looks fine, right? And that leads me to my next point. Even though the Sony might crop the image down to 10 megapixels, let me ask you a question. Since when is 10 megapixels not enough for social media? Since when is 10 megapixels not enough for video? Since when is 10 megapixels not good enough for blowing up pictures? The reality is 10 megapixels for normal me and you type stuff is perfect. Now, obviously, if you're doing paid work or you're doing client work and you need that resolution, then you want to make sure that you're getting a full frame lens. If we're talking about video, 4K is actually only about 9 megapixels. So even though the crop sensor lens puts the camera in a 10 megapixel or crop mode on the a7 III, a7R cameras, it'll crop down to like 19 megapixels or something like that. The truth is, 4K is only 9 megapixels, so it's more than enough. All right, now let's talk about the Sigma 16mm f1.4. This was one of my favorite lenses on a crop sensor camera, and it's still one of my favorite lenses on the a7 III. See, crop mode does have some disadvantages, man. The first thing is you do lose megapixels. The second thing is you are gonna lose some dynamic range because you're not using the full sensor. The third thing is your depth of field is gonna change too. So even though the 16mm f1.4 is a 16mm f1.4, without getting too technical, when you put that on a crop sensor camera, it actually becomes about a 24mm f2 lens, right? Now, that's not to say that that's bad. 24mm is around my favorite video lens. I'm filming on a 16mm f1.4 lens right now, so my effective focal length right now is about 24mm. That is a super useful focal length for vlogging, for video creation. I still use this lens on paid gigs, but only for video. And trust me, nobody's ever looked at it like, oh my God, he's using a crop sensor camera on a full frame lens. Trust me, man, people don't care. People honestly don't care. All of the features that you love about the Sony full frame cameras, such as eye autofocus, face detect, all of that stuff still works even if the lens is in crop mode. So in a nutshell, the Sigma 16mm lens is, in my opinion, still one of the best lenses, especially because you can get it for around $300 if you can find it used, about $450 brand new. Now, there's not too many offerings when it comes to full frame, wide aperture lenses that have silent focusing and all of that stuff, unless you want to spend a lot of money. Samyang, Rokinon are starting to come out, but honestly, I would much rather use Sigma just because I've used a ton of Sigma lenses over the years. I already know what to expect. If you already have one, don't be afraid to use it. Use it, man, use it. Should you buy one if you got a Sony a7 III and you're just looking for a low cost, really sharp video lens and also photo lens for like landscapes and general purpose photography, I think it's still a killer lens to have. Now again, I do use this lens professionally, but I know when to use it. I know, how to use it within its limitations. It's mostly for video. I'm not really using it for pictures. If I'm using it for pictures, I would much rather get a full frame lens. Now again, that's not to say it can't do some good stuff in crop mode, but having that full frame dynamic range along with 24 megapixels is usually always gonna be better. I'm lying, not usually, will always be better than 10 megapixels. If you don't have a vlogging lens, if you don't have a wide angle, fast aperture lens for your a7 III, I'm gonna go ahead and still get a Sigma 16 millimeter, the stamp of approval. So that's all I got for you. It's cold. I think I've done enough blabbing. Let's get out of here. Piece of chicken grease, Terry Warfield. I'm out. Peace.